When I first came to the United States right after finishing college, when I was about 21 years old, my friends and family back in Mexico asked me, hey, how are you coping with the racism in Mexico? Like, you know, they don't like Mexicans, right? And I was thinking, you know, it's weird because I feel better in the United States than I feel in my own home country. And I don't know why that is, right? I didn't have that consciousness about diversity and inclusion, all these conversations that we have here in the United States. And little by little, I started realizing that I was a brown person living in Mexico, and being a brown person in Mexico, it's a bad thing. And we almost don't talk about it. We ignore it, right? Because it's part of our DNA, part of our culture. We're all mestizos, so we shouldn't be talking about race. We're all Mexican, right? That's a race. Well, it's not. I hope it was true, but it's not. I had the fortune to start working with Moctezuma Esparza, and there was a meeting with Warner Brothers very early on when I started with him. And he said, you know, we should hire this very successful film director who is indigenous. He has like indigenous features and he's brown, just like Julio. And I was astonished. I said, how can Moctezuma say that in front of all these people? He's insulting me. Do I look indigenous? Well, then I confronted him afterwards and I said, Mocte, why did you say that? Like, why did you insult me in front of so many people? I said, insult you? Why? You said I looked indigenous. I said, so why is that bad? And that's what triggered my waking up. So very recently in Mexico, this conversation has started to pick up. And now there's data to support it. Now we know that indigenous population in Mexico are 4 times more likely to be poor than light-skinned Latinos, or light-skinned Mexicans, rather. So this is not just a story. This is about all being equal. And we, as Mexican Americans, we need to have a common front to support our agenda, support our struggle in this country. We need to have a common front, and we do not at this point use. I think representation in media is a very important thing. I mean, Bell has been working on this for a long, long time, doing a great job. Moctezuma, a lot of people who have been working on increasing the positive representation in media and Hollywood in this country. But I think we have overseen the fact that brown Latinos have been underrepresented in that equation. Just USC released a report about Latino representation on the top 100 films of the last 10 years. Just as a little example, in these 1,200 films, there's only been 17 leading Latina roles. In 1,200 films, 17 Latinas. That's all. And 5 of those 17 roles are Cameron Diaz. Okay? So this is a very important conversation to have. Right now, I created Pigmentocracia Foundation. Pigmentocracia is going to focus on raising awareness on these conversations, both in Mexico and in the United States. In the United States, the Spanish-speaking networks like Univision and Telemundo, they are rather, I don't want to say wide, but they lean towards the first skin side, as Belle mentioned. Dylan Roof, that name, I don't know if that sounds familiar. Dylan Roof was the shooter at Charleston, South Carolina in 2015. When his manifesto was released, it read something like this. He said, I was watching Hispanic networks, and I realized that their programming and their advertising, it's white. It's probably whiter than ours, and that's a good thing. End of quote. That's not a good thing that somebody like him said something like that. I was doing a study recently, and I realized that Telemundo, it shows whiter skinned individuals than its sister company, NBC. And that's outrageous because I think brown skin is beautiful. And Latinos, we are all sorts of colors. But the reality is that we weren't 50% mixed with Spanish. We're about 80-20, or probably 80-15 and 5 African, right? So yes, we are all of all colors, but we're mostly indigenous. And seems like we are ashamed of that for some reason. And we need to overcome that because it's at the root of our self-esteem. Beauty or feeling beautiful, it's at the cornerstone of a healthy self-esteem. All psychologists agree that for a young kid to feel beautiful, it's important. They found correlation between kids that feel beautiful and being healthier, perform better at school, and being more active, right? So feeling beautiful, it's very important for self-esteem. So we need to feel beautiful. We need to increase that very limited definition of beauty that we are currently living on. We need to expand it, to broaden it. It's easier for us to change that definition of beauty in our brains, that change who we are. Because we are who we are. We have all sorts of features, and feeling beautiful, it's what we need. Brown is also beautiful. All colors are beautiful, but we need to stress that brown, it's very beautiful, and take that message out, and I think that's what I wanted to tell you. On an end note, just wanted to show you this. I don't know if you've seen the cover of this magazine. This is Yalitza Aparicio at the cover of Vogue magazine. It took 120 years for Vogue magazine to put an indigenous woman in its cover. This is an amazing thing that happened. And after that, Vogue Mexico has been actually putting more indigenous people in their covers. So Yalitza pretty much broke a glass ceiling. But one person is not enough, as Julio Nava said. Not 100. It needs to be a movement. It needs to be more people. But I think this is a beautiful cover, and that's it. Thank you.
Bravo. Bravo.